There's no visible color here, no trees or water, not even the sky, only endless, blinding, unforgiving white. Across this frozen wasteland, a line of men slowly forward. They're wrapped in torn wool and stiffened leather. Their faces are blackened by frostbite. Their eyes are hollow. Some are barefoot. Some are coughing blood into their scarves. All of them are starving. They drag something behind them, a boat, not floating on water, but scraping across solid ice. Every step is agony. Every breath burns. Every mile feels impossible. Welcome back to Legends May Live, where we explore the strange, the mysterious, and the eerie. I'm Drew, and today we're looking at the Franklin expedition. Just a quick note first. While we try to stick to the facts, some sources may conflict, and details can blur through history. Also, names will likely be mispronounced. In 1845, Britain stood at the height of its power. Its navy ruled the oceans, and its factories fed the world. Its maps stretched across every continent. But there's still one place that refuses to be conquered: the Arctic. For centuries, sailors searched for a shortcut through the frozen north. They were looking for a sea route connecting Europe to Asia. They call it the Northwest Passage. If someone can find it, they will be immortalized as a hero for the rest of history. And in 1845, Britain believes it has finally found the man to do it: Sir John Franklin. Franklin is a 59-year-old man, which, by the standards of his time, he's pretty old. But he's also respected. He's a veteran explorer, a naval officer, and he's already endured starvation in the Arctic once before. In spite of his survival of the earlier trip to the Arctic, it wasn't as glamorous as it all seemed. Sure, he came back a hero to the public, but the trip was hard. He watched men die in the cold. He wasn't about to let that happen a second time around. To him, this voyage was about redemption as much as anything else. Franklin was given two ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. They're marvels of engineering. Their hulls are reinforced with iron. Their bows are armored and their engines are fitted with steam power. That means they can keep going even when the wind dies. In addition to the best ships that Britain could provide, they're loaded with supplies. They have thousands of cans of preserved food, medical supplies, warm clothing to spare, scientific instruments, books, and other various entertainments like cards and drawing supplies. There is no expense spared for this expedition. It's not some desperate voyage hoping for the best. This is a well-prepared, floating fortress. It's basically a moving city designed to survive anywhere on Earth. And the men board these ships in good spirits. They joke on deck, write confident letters back home. They make plans for when they return. Some promise children they'll bring back souvenirs, and some promise their wives that they'll be gone just a few years. On May 19th, 1845, the Erebus and Terror pulled away from England. Crowds line the docks, flags wave, families cheer as the best ships and the top navy with the best equipment and best leader shove off to sea. By late summer, the expedition reaches the edge of known charts. Beyond this point, there are no reliable maps or rescue stations. The safe routes were behind them, and ahead was nothing but ice and silence. Still, Franklin presses forward, confident and unshaken. But as winter approaches, the Arctic begins to close its trap. At first, it's slow. Small sheets of ice drift past the holes. Thin crystals form along the waterline, but the sea still moves and still feels alive. But with each passing day, the water thickens and the waves grow sluggish. The temperature just keeps dropping until one morning, the ships no longer move. The Erebus and Terror are frozen in place. They're locked inside the ice, but this is actually normal. Every Arctic expedition expects to be trapped for the winter, so they've planned and prepared extensively for this. As they wait through the winter, each day starts to get shorter and the sunrises get lower and lower until it stops altogether. And for months, there's only darkness, 24 hours a day. There's no sunrise, no sunset, only dim twilight at noon. And it's pitch black the rest of the time. The men live by lantern light and candles. Outside, temperatures drop to 50 degrees below zero. The crew can hear sharp sounds of metal snapping as it contracts in the cold and the wood cracking as they step on it as they move along the deck. Their breath freezes midair. Inside the ships, moisture coats the walls and frost creeps across the ceiling. Ice even forms on blankets. It's all so surreal to them, like living in a totally different world. To many of the crew, it feels like they're living inside frozen coffins. Franklin knows what darkness can do to the mind, so he fights it best he can. Every day he orders routines like exercise, cleaning, inspections, and he organizes plays. He has them put on concerts, he does readings and dinners, and really just anything to make sure that the crew remains healthy both physically and mentally. And the men perform Shakespeare, some form a band, they hold mock trials, they just try anything and everything they can do to kind of keep themselves entertained and not think about the dark, frozen wasteland that they're trapped in for the time being. And for a while it works. Laughter echoes down the frozen corridors, music drifts through the hull, and hope survives. But before long, their bodies begin to fail. It starts slowly. A sailor complains of fatigue. Another loses his appetite. A third develops swollen gums, and his teeth start to loosen. Bleeding begins as old scars reopen. Many of the men were suffering from scurvy, a disease sailors know well, and it's caused by vitamin C deficiency, but it doesn't make sense because they had specifically taken precautions to prevent scurvy. They had canned vegetables, preserved meat, lime juice. Really, they have a balanced diet, a healthy diet at this point. So they shouldn't be sick, yet here they are, and no one really understands why. And if all of this isn't bad enough, soon other symptoms begin. Some of the men start getting confused and irritable. Some complain about headaches that just won't stop. Some shake uncontrollably. Many are forgetful, and some even have hallucinations. They're seeing shadows that aren't there, hearing voices in empty corridors. Then the food just starts tasting wrong. Usually it tasted metallic or bitter, sometimes sweet, though some would just say it tasted unbearable. And it's so bad that a few sailors quietly stop eating. They would rather starve than swallow another bite of this disgusting food. All the while, the ice just keeps growing. It presses against the hulls slowly and relentlessly, making the metal pop and crack. Bolts bend and timbers groan. Sometimes the shifting metal makes loud cracks that sound like gunshots, so men are waking up terrified, convinced the ships are splitting apart. Still, they try to settle their minds by writing letters to their families back home. Not that they would really have any way to deliver them until much, much later, but still it was comforting to kind of feel like they were talking to someone they loved. And so they would write about the beautiful ice formations, calm spirits, high morale, assuring themselves as much as anyone that there was nothing to worry about. So basically what they were doing was sort of trying to talk themselves into feeling like, oh yes, things are great. It's beautiful out here. There's really just this vacation going on. And so they seal the envelopes, stack them carefully, and place them in storage, waiting for spring, when they could finally get free from the ice, and sending them would be more of a possibility. By the time daylight returns, the ice doesn't retreat. The men wait, but there's no crack. It just stays there, encapsulating their ships. And another summer passes, then fall, and the men are terrified because they're still trapped and winter is coming again. And now they're weaker, sicker, they're mentally and emotionally drained. That this is hard, but they force themselves to hold on to hope. Still, it's getting harder to pretend every day. Some historians believe that during this time, Sir John Franklin begins to understand that his expedition is in danger and his ships may never be released. But if he is afraid, he doesn't show it. He keeps his uniform pressed, perfect posture, and a calm voice. The captain must never let his crew see doubt, even when doubt is all that he feels. And the second winter comes, and it's much worse. The men are weak, and they can barely climb ladders. Some can't even walk without help. Their clothes hang loose on shrinking frames. Many can't stop their hands from trembling. They're malnourished. Simple tasks now take overwhelming effort, and the darkness returns for months without sun. If things weren't bad enough, sometime in June of 1847, weakened by starvation, illness, and cold, Sir John Franklin dies. The leader of Britain's greatest Arctic expedition passes, and with him, so much of the hope of the crew. Command passes to two men, Francis Crozier and James Fitzjames. Both are experienced, capable men, but neither of them is Franklin, and now they're tasked with leading a dying expedition filled with sick men, rotting supplies, failing equipment, and crushing isolation. Every decision feels like a gamble with death, and there are no good options. Around this time, though they didn't know it, the canned food, which was sealed with lead solder, began leaching into their mills and into their water. They were slowly being subjected to lead poisoning, and day by day, meal by meal, it damaged their nerves, dulled their minds, and impaired their judgment. It was making them grow weaker and weaker every day, as well as more confused and irrational, as if their confinement in a frozen wasteland wasn't enough to mess with their heads. And as the months passed, small disagreements became shouting matches. Some of the crew became paranoid, while others withdraw completely. A few began to talk to themselves, and some can be heard crying in their bunks at night. As madness grows, discipline weakens and rules are just ignored. Orders are questioned, and the structure that once sort of defined their crew is falling apart. Meanwhile, the onboard doctors are doing everything they can just to try to treat the symptoms of what we now know was lead poisoning, but to them was some unknown ailment. They issue extra rations where they can, and they try special diets, herbal remedies, and they try to make sure the men get enough rest, but nothing works. They keep dying one by one, and each makeshift funeral it's a hard hit to morale of the remaining men. Each frozen grave is a reminder that it could be me next. Sometime in early 1848, the officers met by candlelight in a small cabin. Maps are spread out across the table, and they have charts marked with what's more of guesses and approximations than anything definite. And as they look at their maps and they talk among one another, they come to a conclusion that really made their hearts sink in their chests. Nobody is coming for them. And their own ships are not getting free from the ice. The ships are not coming free, and if they stay, they're going to die a slow and agonizing death. So they decide that there's only one last chance, and it is a big gamble. They have to abandon their ships. This is an idea that they don't take lightly. For over 2 years, the ships have been their homes. It's the only shelter that they have, and to leave is almost certainly a death sentence. But at this point, staying was definitely a death sentence. So, given that leaving was the only way that they could possibly live, a slim chance was better than nothing. They decided that they would march south toward the known trading posts and civilization, but it would be anything but easy. It would be across hundreds of miles of ice, dragging boats and carrying supplies through negative-degree temperatures, and several days while they were already weak and sick. But it was still better than just waiting to die. So in the weeks that follow, the men pack. They carefully choose what to bring. They pack food, guns, books, silverware, clocks, personal letters, among other things. A lot of choices that really didn't make much sense, but also to some of them, it just helped to feel a bit of normalcy to bring some of these things. So sort of making it less like walking straight into their own grave and more like they're just moving. Then, in the spring of 1848, the men of the Franklin expedition prepare to do something that none of them had ever dreamt that they may do when they first got aboard those ships. They leave. They walk straight into the Arctic. April 22nd, 1848, one by one, the men step off the docks of the Erebus and Terror. For nearly 3 years, these ships have been their world, their last protection from death. And now, they walk away. With the sound of boots crunching on the snow, each man pulls a sledge with a small boat. It has food rations, blankets, weapons, and various personal belongings. Some of their loads weigh over 200 pounds. Across uneven ice in sub-zero temperatures, with their bodies already breaking down, it's a near impossible task, but somehow they keep going because stopping means certain death. Within days, the men start collapsing. Some fall and can't get back up. Others just lie down and welcome death. For those still standing, there's no time for proper burials. There's no energy for mourning. The bodies are just wrapped in cloth and placed beneath stones at best, or left where they fall at worst. And the march continues on because it has to. And pretty soon, the men begin lightening their loads by tossing off what they can. They throw off books, instruments, letters, really anything that they could do without, anything that's not an absolute necessity. And all along the way, they're leaving behind them pieces of their former lives, and it's just this trail of memories. Unknown to the sailors, they're not completely alone. Inuit hunters sometimes see them in the distance. To them, they're just thin figures dragging heavy sledges across the horizon, but when they see it, they're shocked because no one travels like this. Certainly not if they intend to survive. So some Inuit approach them and they try to help. They try to give them food and advice, but there's this language barrier paired with the exhaustion and confusion and the poor mental health from the lead poisoning. And it just makes it impossible for them to work together. And so the sailors continue on, totally alone. And soon they realize that they've gone through all their rations. So they try hunting, but animals are scarce, and the men resort to chewing leather. They're boiling boots. They're gnawing on bones, and they start dreaming about food and arguing over crumbs. They do their best to press on, but one by one, the men vanish. By the summer of 1848, the entire Franklin expedition is gone. It's swallowed by the Arctic. The greatest naval mission of its era, reduced to rumors. Back in England, Months pass, then years, with no words or reports of the expedition. And at first, no one was worried. Silence is expected, but by 1848, concern turned into fear. Families began writing letters to officials, and they asked questions, and newspapers began to speculate. Where is Franklin? Why hasn't he returned? Why hasn't anyone heard anything? And the silence is becoming unbearable. The British Admiralty finally acts. They launch rescue missions. Dozens of ships, sled teams, and land expeditions are sent north, and they comb the coastlines and search rivers. They talk to Inuit communities and map unknown regions looking for survivors or, at the minimum, answers. And the Inuit hunters begin sharing stories. They described white men dragging boats and camps filled with dead bodies. They talk about encounters with starving strangers begging for food, with stories of people eating their own kind. And these stories are disturbing, and many British officials just dismiss them. They believe that civilized men would never do such things. They say that the Inuits must be mistaken. But in 1850, searchers found the graves of 3 men, perfectly preserved in permafrost. Inside are young sailors, still in uniform, their faces frozen in time. They are from Franklin's crew, the first physical proof that the expedition crew is dead. But how and where are the others? In 1859, a search party makes a critical discovery. On King William Island, they find a note placed inside a cairn and protected by stones. It's written in 2 parts. The first, dated 1847, it says, "All is well. The expedition is wintering safely. Franklin is alive. Spirits are high." The second part, added later, tells a different story. Dated April 1848, "Franklin is dead. 24 men have already died. The ships are abandoned. Survivors are marching south." It's the only known official message they ever leave, their final report to the world. And with this note as a guide, searchers retrace the route, and what they find is devastating. Skeletons, boots, buttons, tools, pieces of boats scattered across miles of ice. Each object marks a place where someone gave up, where someone fell or died suddenly. The Arctic was an open graveyard. As remains are studied, investigators notice something. There are a lot of broken bones, but they're not all broken from a fall or something like that. They're split open, some burned, and some knife marks. They're signs of processing for consumption. The Inuit stories were true. The men resorted to cannibalism. The last illusion of Victorian heroism collapses. The truth is uglier and far more human. Still, one person refuses to give up. Franklin's wife, Lady Jane. For years, she funds searches, writes letters, and pressures politicians. She refuses to let her husband's name vanish. And because of her, more expeditions are launched. More land is mapped, and still more clues surface. But in spite of everything, most of the crew has never recovered, and hundreds of questions remain unanswered. By the late 1800s, the Franklin expedition is no longer just a tragedy. It's morphed into a legend, told as a cautionary tale. For more than 150 years, the Erebus and Terror remained hidden, somewhere in the Arctic waters, locked under ice. Eventually, the ships themselves become something of legends, ships that may or may not still exist, hidden in a frozen wasteland. However, by the early 21st century, everything changes as new technology emerges. With the emergence of things like sonars, satellite mapping, underwater drones, and high-resolution cameras, suddenly the Arctic can be explored like never before. So search teams return, this time truly prepared to take on the Arctic, but now they're hunting ghosts. And in 2014, they finally found one. A Canadian expedition locates a wreck resting on the seafloor. It was in remarkable condition. The masts had fallen, the hull was upright, windows still in place. It didn't take long to confirm this is the HMS Erebus. After 169 years, one of Franklin's ships is found. And just 2 years later, in 2016, researchers found HMS Terror. And this time the ship is astonishingly preserved, even better than the Erebus. The doors are closed, cabins intact, glass is unbroken. It looks ready to sail, almost like the crew could return at any minute. Underwater cameras are able to capture the inside, and what they see is almost eerie. The tables are still set, with bottles even still standing upright. Beds are neatly made, just everything is frozen in place. The wrecks answer some questions, but they bring up more, like, why were the ships here? Why had Terror moved south again? Why did some areas look like they were prepared with the intention to return? It suggests something unexpected, that perhaps some men returned to the ships, that maybe they tried again, and possibly that hope refused to die, even at the end. Today there are monuments to Franklin, plaques, museum exhibits, documentaries, and more. For decades, Inuit warnings were ignored, dismissed, or labeled as superstition, yet they were right. And that's it for today's episode of Legends Made Live. If you enjoyed the story, please remember to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. Until next time, if you get invited on an expedition to the Arctic, listen to the locals who know how to survive.